Welcome everybody to Workshop Wednesday for July. Today's agenda is back to basics, making and managing reservations. So I think a lot of you will get a lot of value out of this in terms of understanding how you better manage your reservations and the process for making them effectively. Some standard items that we cover every month, but fundamentally, I think a lot of you that have been here before know that, this is a standard monthly series that we stand up, and it's dedicated to helping you get the full value out of FleetCommander. So from a hands-on, how do I change things, to, some recurrent training on different areas, which is what we'll be talking about today. The webinars are always the same time of the month. So it's the third Wednesday of the month from 2 to 3 Eastern. As always, we really do appreciate your feedback. And so there is a survey QR code at the end of the deck. We would really appreciate you snapping that with your camera, your smart device, and responding to the survey. If you prefer a link to the survey, please let us know and we'll send you a link. The meeting is being recorded, so for everybody that's registered, you will get a link after the fact, probably tomorrow, with a copy of the webinar material. And then lastly, your mic is muted during the webinar. So if you do have questions, we recommend that you use the Teams chat session, which John is kind of showing you right now about where it is in case you're not familiar with Teams. And just tell us, who you are and, what you want to know about, and we'll get to it. And typically we'll do that during the presentation. So again, John, with that, I'll let you go. Have a good webinar. And if there's any questions, please put them in the chat, everybody.
Thank you, Joe, for the introduction. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. Yes, he says 2 o'clock Eastern. I had to remind myself that I am currently on Central Time. I'm actually on the road already, headed towards the vacation, but not until I got done with the important things, which includes Workshop Wednesday. So I am in Central Time right now in Wichita Falls, Texas, where it's like 109 degrees, and I'm glad I have an indoor job because that certainly wouldn't want to deal with that. But so here I am, and I'm glad to be hosting the Workshop Wednesday again. As you can see, our theme and our subject material today is in regards to making and managing reservations. We're going to really kind of talk and discuss this in regards to building on the basics that we've already established through these Workshop Wednesdays that are dedicated to really the training purpose and that you would receive during an implementation process or whenever you are onboarding a new employee. So we're going to show the what we've already covered. We're going to build upon that. We're going to end up talking about the manage menu that you see from your dashboard in FleetCommander, and from there we'll dive into the manage make reservation, compare and contrast the end user interface that your requesters are going to be using to make reservations for staff versus the admin interface that you have access to with your enterprise setting as either enterprise admin or even site admin. Then we'll also then discuss in regards to manage reservations. We'll look at the launch page for the manage reservations and the filters and the fields and the action buttons that are found there. And then we'll also get into the actual altering the reservations through the schedule and view request page, and with those various fields and buttons. So with that being said, building on the basics, previously on back to the basic sessions, we started off with that end user experience. What a person who is part of your organization, when they want to request the vehicle to drive either for themselves or for someone else, we showed you what that looks like. And we're going to touch that again because it really is different than what you see and should see as an admin, but it's always really good to bear in mind what the people are going to see that are interacting with your system and how it differs from how you interact with the system each and every day, because there's going to eventually be questions. They're going to run into an issue and they're going to ask you, how do I do this? And your answer is going to be slightly different based upon for their actions versus how you would approach it as an admin. We also then in February, we ended up talking about managing those users and managing the vehicles. users and vehicles combined together allow you to make reservations within FleetCommander. So we covered that as part of our basics. And then based upon the input of y'all, we ended up focusing for a bit in May in regards to the maintenance module. There's a lot of y'all that are currently using the maintenance module or are interested in using that. And so based upon your input, we decided to kind of take a pause in the manage functions and look at that maintenance module. And we're happy to do that. And in fact, as we'll say throughout this presentation, we do want your input. This session is for you, and we want to be able to model it and mold it in a way that is beneficial for you. And there are going to be some opportunities even this year to amend the topic list. So let us know about that. That being said, let's go ahead and put on our hard hat and keep on building on these basics. The FleetCommander's managed menu. This is what you see whenever you go to the dashboard side, the admin side of FleetCommander. It is really your launching point for engaging with FleetCommander, with the various profiles and the module data that's in there. The links that you see on this drop-down menu, really they vary based upon the modules that you've purchased. So not everyone's going to see exactly this same list in the managed drop-down. If you don't have maintenance, you're not going to see the maintenance or the work orders or the parts inventory portion. But everyone, as we pointed out before, has as part of their manage menu, we're going to have users and vehicles, and we've discussed that as part of our previous back to basics session. And today we're going to now take a look at the make reservation and the reservations, manage reservation portion of this menu. Manage make reservations. FleetCommander, reservations can be entered in various portions of the application. There's several launching points that can occur. The first one that the majority of people that are going to be interacting with your system, i.e. your requesters, your drivers, they access that through a portion from the welcome page that is different than the way that you interact with the system. And I'm just going to review that so that you can keep in mind a couple of items and see how that differs for what I'm going to show you today when you make your reservation from the admin side of FleetCommander. Accessing it again is through the welcome page. You go to and click on make reservations. At that point, by default, the request goes as the person who is logged in and making that request. That the system is set up for that radio button to fill in automatically with this request is for me. However, from this page, you can have your end users through a setting in FleetCommander that by default is always clicked on, that allows you to make requests for somebody else. If there is a situation where policy changes and only people that are requesters drivers can request their own vehicle and nobody else can request for others, let us know and with our support team, and we can actually turn that off so this screen disappears on that, and it always immediately assigns the person who is logged in. But with that, again, requesters can make the reservation for somebody else. You can click search for driver. It pops up a menu that allows you to search by driver name, and you type in the last name and hit go, and that'll fill in the driver profile information into the form on that. So I put in my name and it pulls in my username. Now, two things I want to make note of. Make sure that when you use this function that you do click on the radio button for this request is for somebody else. Otherwise, it's not going to capture that information and it's just going to default back to you as the requester. Now, again, when I say you in this situation, just picture yourself as your end user, somebody who's logging in, doesn't have admin rights. They just have requester and driver privileges on that. And again, this field requires the username, not the last name. I've seen countless times where people will end up typing in this field, put in the last name, and then they'll hit continue, and the system will say the user is not found. Well, it's because they put in the driver's last name on there. It is the driver's username for that information. One thing I want to point out too in regards to this portion of the reservation process is that that section above who the request is for can be configured to add additional information to guide the requester as they make those reservations. And we highly recommend that you look at your requirements for and what you're going to be asking for, information you want to share in regards to policy or procedure, and actually use this as an opportunity to share that. And that is customized the layout via configure enterprise layout, make reservation help text on that. So once they put in their information, they hit select and they continue, and they're then presented with the usage types. Not all of your staff, not all your requesters and drivers are going to have access to all the usage types that may be in your system. That is by design. Some may end up have an additional usage type that populates within their profile. In this situation, my buddy Abraham Lincoln here has only one usage type, which is the short-term rental that is illustrated right here. With that, whenever the requester or himself or someone else logs in, all it's going to populate would have, in that situation, would have been the short-term rental. Now, that being said, if this is the only usage type that a person has in their profile and they have access to only one site, then this page actually just gets skipped in picking the usage type. FleetCommander by default will fill that in automatically. This, though, however, in the situations where there may be multiple usage types that your end users have access to, we again recommend you use the space above this section to communicate, explain what are short-term rentals versus seasonal rentals on that. And that can be customized again through the enterprise layout sections. Now, some of your staff, however, may have access to multiple sites. And so those that might have access might have two usage types and only access to one site. This is what it's going to look like from their experience. However, for those that have access to multiple sites, there's actually a drop-down menu where they can select those. Now, if someone requires to be able to drive a vehicle from a site that they don't currently have permissions to, they'll need to contact you and get that added because it's otherwise they're not going to be able to request vehicles from that particular site. But if they do have multiple sites that they have permission to as a driver and requester, then the drop-down menu appears and they're able to select that and continue the request. And then there's, of course, the various information that can be added there by your drivers for the reservation. And then once that is done, you hit next, and they review the information and hit submit on that. They have the option of going back and changing it if they want to, or they can submit and make similar requests. And then finally, once they do that, they'll get a message that your request has been submitted, hit close, and they'll end up receiving email on that. Also, it will take them automatically to the My Schedule section of the vehicle use drop-down menu from the welcome page. Now, that's what your end users will see. And we find that a lot of it of our admins and users of FleetCommander that from their fleet staff, they end up making reservations in that same spot, and that really is not best practice. There really are multiple places within the admin side of FleetCommander that is the intended place for you to make those reservations, and we're going to cover those as part of this managed make reservation, because manage make reservation is actually the first and foremost spot that you would go to make those reservations. Of course, to get to there from the welcome page, you click on administration. You then click on that manage menu, and then you will find wherever it's placed within your drop-down menu. And it might vary based upon preferences and how it was set up. But you click on the make reservations. And this is where we first see the biggest change between the end users side of entering reservations and the admin side. You might have noticed there that radio button actually dropped down from the top of this request is for me, and it drops down to this request is for. That's because the assumption is that you're going to not be making reservations for yourself, but that you are going to be making reservations for someone else. And so as a matter of convenience, that fills in automatically by default. If you do want to make it for yourself, I mean, you can go in and put in this request is for me, click on that radio button on there and do that way, or actually you could just type in your own your username to it. Either way would be fine. But in this situation, I'm going to go ahead and type in Abraham Lincoln's name, his username, hit continue, and then the process is basically the same at that point. The difference that we see then again here though is that with an admin dispatcher, with your admin or a dispatcher rights and permissions, you actually see all usage types when you hit this page, regardless of the usage types that are in the profile of the individual that you're making the reservations for. Now that's unique only to admins and to dispatchers. A normal requester is not going to see that as they engage with the system from the requester side. But for you, there may be a situation where it is necessary for you to go ahead and assign a yearly rental for someone, and even though they never and typically will ever need that opportunity, but this is in the moment. The system allows you to actually, in essence, override the permissions, the usage type level that's in there. And so what will happen is that if that's the case, if you end up clicking on maintenance on that, the system is asking, do you really want to do this? Because that particular person you're making this reservation for, under normal circumstances, does not have that permission level. They don't have access to that usage type. But we do recognize that there are times that you do need to override the system, and this is one of those opportunities, but we just want to make sure that that is actually the decision that you want to make, and we have you confirm that. At that point, you also have a situation where the usage types will appear. But sorry, after that point, there is then the opportunity to assign the sites of it. However, unlike usage types, as an admin, you will only see the permitted sites on which this driver is allowed to get vehicles from, or to be a site level driver on that. There is not a way outside going into the profile and changing and giving them those permissions for that to show up automatically during this process. That is a kind of fail-safe for us, because we find that it's most likely there's going to be rare occasions that someone is going to need, if you're managing multiple sites through FleetCommander, that somebody who has not been set up already is going to need to have access to a site that they don't normally use. So, but if someone does have multiple sites in their profile, then that the site selection menu appears, and you make that choice, and then you can continue. At this point, then again, the reservation form appears. You fill out the information that is requested on that. However, in this situation, it is possible as an admin to not have to fill in all of the same required fields. Say there may be information that is you would not have it, but in normal processes, that like an account number, it may be that you require, if someone's entering a request for someone else, that you require them to submit that account number to you before the reservation is even considered or can even be entered into FleetCommander. But for your purposes, you're like, I don't want to be burdened with that. I will make sure to enter it at a later date. That process actually is part where you can configure these fields based upon where the reservation form is being engaged. There is you can configure it for what is required and requested for making new reservations as a user, as making new reservations as an admin, going in and modifying the request. It may be that a field is empty, like that account field. If it is a required field as part of, even when viewing or modifying it as an admin, the system will stop you down and say, you've got to put something in this field. Well, you can actually configure the system for that interaction where it will not be a required field, just simply a requested field. You can also modify the information that is requested or required when doing quick pick, which I'll point that out a little bit later in the presentation. Also, again, with your kiosk and check-in and check-out, that request form, reservation form can be modified with the various things that are asked or required. And then with grab and go, this is all done through configure site name, reservations, custom fields, usage type. So that if you want help in making those type of changes, looking at that, contact support, contact your implementation team if you're still in the onboarding process, or if you're in adoption, talk with Joe and or with Kathy on that. They can help you make those changes to the system. Now, at this point, then you end up clicking next to continue after entering the information. And this is another portion that, as an admin, when you interact with the making reservation portion of FleetCommander, there are 3 elements that appear that do not appear for a end user. One of that is the selection of auto assign a vehicle. You may have the system set up where you have, by default, all of your users, their reservations automatically assign a vehicle to their reservations, and that really is best practice. It takes the thought process out of the interaction. It is configured so that based upon your need, if you want first in, first out, last in, last out, based upon mileage, any of those things can be configured and have the system automatically assign these vehicles. But as an admin, when you're making these reservations, there may be a situation where you want to specifically assign a particular vehicle. In that situation, what you can do is just simply uncheck this if you want to assign that specific vehicle. Also, an element that applies here as admin when you look at the reservations is that you have an ignore buffer. What this means is that it's considering the buffer time that you've placed within your site settings. The end buffer being that there should not be if a reservation comes in, say at 1 o'clock, and you have a end buffer of 15 minutes, then any reservation that comes in, say for 1:05, is not going to be assigned or could take into consideration that vehicle that is returning at 1 p.m. because it's within that less than that 15-minute buffer time. However, as admin, there may be situations when you're doing an admin assignment that you need to squeeze those reservations on top, almost on top of each other. And so ignoring the buffer will actually present you with all vehicles and not filter out the ones that fall short of the required buffer time. And then there is also the submit, request, and assign portion. This is a unique field for admins. Would allow you to go in and make that assignment of those vehicles. So this is if you don't want to make an assignment at that point, if you want to wait on the auto sign or you want to wait on the manual sign, then what you can do is, rather than clicking on the submit, request, and assign, you just simply click on submit request. Now, moving from making the reservations, the managed make reservations, we're going to take a look now at managed reservations itself. Again, go to the manage menu, click on that, and then on the portion that says reservations, and that takes you to this launch page. As you can see here, are multiple fields and filters that allow you to kind of whittle down the information that is being presented here. You might see that you can run with this page. You can actually go in and to see reservations only being picked up during a certain time frame or being returned during a certain time frame. You might want to take a look at reservations that are approved. That means that they are ready to go, but they have not been sent out yet. But you may want to take a look at reservations that are canceled. All that can be changed up here, and by hitting your filter, that will change the view of what is presented here on as the search results based in that moment. If for some reason when you come to this page, you always want to see only the vehicles that are have change requests on it, what you could do in that case is you would end up clicking on the change request section under status and then hit save defaults. What that will do is that every time that you come back to this to manage reservations, you will only be presented the reservations that are tagged as a change request on that. If you do change the default settings on that, always be mindful that you've made those changes, because what can end up happening is you kind of might forget that you changed the defaults. And so you are weeding out reservations that you may on other occasions need to see and go, what happened? Where'd they go? Well, that was because you have a different setting rather than default. If you want to get back to the default settings, then just simply clear the defaults, and then you'll come up with the full list of reservations. From here, those are the fields. There's icons, and we'll take a look at each of these as we in just a moment. But as you can see with the information that's presented here, you have your reservation numbers that are listed here. These are actually the blues are hyperlinked. So if you wanted to go into a reservation, you could actually click on the hyperlink and it'll take you into that reservation. You could go into a user profile by clicking on their names. Those are hyperlinked. You could actually launch an email using your email client by clicking on the email address. It's external from FleetCommander. It's not recorded within FleetCommander that you made those emails, sent those emails, but it is an option for you for that. And you can also even click into the vehicles that are assigned to these reservations if you want to take a look at those. Now, as mentioned, though, going into the reservation itself, well, you can do that by clicking on the view request icon here, which is the magnifying glass. So when you click on that, it takes you into the reservation itself, where you see several action buttons, including being able to remove the vehicle from this reservation if you decide that's not the right vehicle that they need to be using, and you're not ready to assign another one, or you can change the vehicle and make that switch immediately. There is the ability to cancel the reservation from here. Several of these icons also, these action buttons are icons on the previous launch page that we looked at, and that's how the system interacts, making use of those same processes, but just from different locations. So you have these action buttons. You have the general information about the reservations that are found there, including, again, the person that was the requester. In this case, the person who's the requester, since there's not a driver listed, it means it's the same person. It's not that their driver has not been determined, but it's simply that this person made the request for their own selves. It shows you the scheduled pickup date and time, and the return date and time as the scheduled portion of it, what the duration of that will be. And then once this is actually dispatched out and dispatched back in, it'll fill in here in this portion those actual times. That's particularly helpful if there's some variation on the pickup times and the return times. And then you have the various usage types and information on that. And then also information regarding the vehicle that's been assigned. You also then have an audit log that shows the step-by-step progression of the reservation request. So we see here that a new request was made. There was not a vehicle that was assigned to that. That was an action that was taken moments later. At that point, you have the assignment that appears, and then you have that the request was approved. This right here, as you can see through the time stamps on here, is actually part of the automated process. So each of these track what action was done, and shows you that you can make the logical assumption that this was an automated auto assigned on that. Now, there are times that it would be necessary to make changes to a reservation. You might have some knowledge of that that the car that you need to make a change to the driver, or you may need to make some other changes like that. In that situation, you can start that process from the launch page. You go ahead again and click into the action icon, and then simply click on the action button that says modify request. When modifying requests, what's being asked for, the changes are modifications like changing the driver, changing the dates and times, the vehicle types, the number of occupants, the destination, items like that. This is not this modifying the request is not changing a vehicle type, because they may end up having asked for a sedan for 12 people, and they obviously that vehicle is not going to work for them. And so what you need to do is set up the system so that it requests the vehicle that can accommodate 12 passengers, and that may end up being a large van, or it may be some other vehicle like that that you have within the system. So what you're doing is you're prepping the reservation so that the system can automatically pick another vehicle that fits the actual need for that reservation. So you make those changes as you need to, and then you click on next and continue. Again, you review that portion. And then at that point, you will get a pop-up menu, a message that appears that says, do you want to send a confirmation that this change has been made? In many cases, the answer would be yes, particularly if you've been asked to make those changes by the driver or requester. But if it's kind of internal changes and you receive a lot of requests, a lot of complaints that there are too many emails, people are receiving too many emails. I found this handy, that this is one of those sections where I would simply say, okay, I'm not going to send an email for this particular change because it's only a small change. It doesn't really impact what the driver or requester needs to know about their reservation. Assigning a vehicle, that's another section within FleetCommander that is that you have the ability to do. And unfortunately, my animation here kind of has overridden what would have been seen previously on the screen. It would, from this screen here, if you would have seen this little car, this icon right here, that is the vehicle assignment um, icon. And when you click on that from this launch page, it takes you directly in to the assigned vehicle portion of FleetCommander. And that's this screenshot right here. And so we're not going to really spend time in regards to assigning vehicles as part of this, because that is a different portion of FleetCommander that we will cover in a future Back to Basics. But I just wanted, from the aspect of being within the managed reservations section, you see you have that ability to go and make those vehicle assignments. Cancel a reservation, that is another portion within from the launch page of managed reservations that you have access to. That little red X mark there, by clicking on that, that allows you to go and cancel reservations as needed. Whenever it brings this pop-up window here that asks you to provide the cancellation reason, based upon the cancellation type. You can insert comments if you want to into the notes, and that would be logged within the audit log that we saw earlier. And once you determine the reason for the cancellation, you can end up yes and continue. You also have that ability from managed reservations. It's one of those places within FleetCommander where a reservation can be dispatched. And from here, from that launch, from the launch page, when you go there, you'll see that you can have a couple of options. One, you can go into the reservation again and click on that dispatch window action button, and it brings up the dispatch, what we call the dispatch window. This is a pop-up window that appears over whatever page you're looking at the moment. And as it does, you're going to have some information that you're going to see here. It's going to basically pull the reservation information in regards to the vehicles that were assigned, who was the driver. It will tell you information in regards to usage types and destination and items like that. And when you're here, it may be prior to dispatching your vehicle that that you need to make some changes. And this portion that we're talking about right here, for you, those of you that have key control, and this is going to be one of those items that is good to have stored away, that you know how to use this, but your key control system basically fills in all this information for you and works for in proxy for you and for capturing when a vehicle goes out, when a vehicle comes back in. But there are several of our clients that don't currently have key control. When I used FleetCommander for 10 years, we did not have key control. So this was a section of FleetCommander that I was engaged in 60 times a day. So I'm very familiar with this, and some of you will become very familiar with this section, this portion also. But that being said, for all of us, so that we have an understanding of the dispatch window, the pop-up window, if there's situations that there are changes that need to be made before a vehicle goes out, well, you actually have the opportunity to make some of those changes from this dispatch window. One of those is the change vehicle. That up at the top there is hyperlinked, and it takes you to in a special change view that is unique to the dispatch window itself, or it gives you a list of vehicles that match the requirements of the reservation. You do have the ability, as we pointed out earlier, in regards to fields and filters, you can change what the view here, and by these drop-down menus, and by doing so, you refresh the list and it'll refresh which vehicles are presented. And then there's also even the send confirmation emails. Remember when you opted out to not send one earlier? This would be one of those portions in this case that it is not going to send out an email because you're in the moment of dispatching the vehicle. But if you want a record sent to the driver, you could do that at this point. As we said, those are your various drop-down menus that you can use there. There's also the ability to change the driver within the dispatch window. From that portion there, we just simply would click on change. You would get the menu that allows you to search for the driver. If you happen to know already the driver's user ID, simply type that in to the field up there rather than searching for that. But again, you would search for last name and it would end up filling that in for you. Now, those are the basic functions in regards to changing the request. If you need to make other changes like to the reservation, that would have been done earlier. But those are the two critical portions: the change of vehicle, change of driver, that you can do in the moment. Now, when doing manual dispatch, though, there are some other items that you need to enter in there, including determining when a reservation is dispatched. You actually have two time frames that you're presented with that manual dispatch in the dispatch window. One is current date and time, the other is request date and time. So you can see that there are two icons there, a clock and an R. The clock represents the current date and time when you have clicked on dispatch, and what will end up happening is that the system will fill in that time frame on that. Now, in most cases, that's going to be what you're going to want to capture, is the actual time that a vehicle is being dispatched, because you're going to want to compare that to when the vehicle was scheduled and when the vehicle was returned, and you want to see if somebody is misusing the reservation and the rental fleet, because they're scheduling these things for longer or shorter than they're actually being used. And so capturing the actual time of dispatch in the moment is really going to help you with those metrics on that. And you can override this field. There are various ways of doing that. You can click on the clock here, this icon, and it will fill in the drop down menu to put in the time. You can click on the calendar. It'll give you a pop-up menu that allows you to pick your date on that. But by default, when you click on current date and time, it fills that in with that information. But there's also the original reservation date and time, which will pull from the scheduled start date and place that for you within the date out without you having to type that in manually. The situations that you're going to use this for my experience, is in those times that you don't know when the keys are actually being handed out. When they're, you don't know, for some reason you had to lay the keys out because no one was going to be in the office, but somebody had the key, an access key to the facility, and they were able to go in there and they picked up that vehicle. Well, you're just going to need to trust that they picked the vehicle up at 10 a.m. Back, on that day. And so that's the best that you can do. So you just go with the start dated time. Other scenarios, particularly when you don't have key control, is say that you do allow for reservations to occur over the weekend, but the reservation is you're not going to be working during that time. So you hand out the keys on Friday. I did this all the time. What I would end up doing is I would use the reservation start date for Saturday or for Sunday. And so that way I'm just trusting that they're picking up the vehicle and returning it when they said. And so I would use that reservation start time. Other dispatch window items that you can find here. You do need to make sure that your reservations have a start odometer on that. The first time, if you're new to using FleetCommander, the first reservations that you send out, that needs to be populated. But from that point forward, it will always take the most recent record that's within FleetCommander, be that the last reservation end mileage, or the oil change that was just done if you have the maintenance module, or the fuel record from fueling if you have the fuel module. It will fill in that last mileage record for you automatically on that. So that is a portion that you want to monitor, make sure that's filled out. Watch out for, when dispatching, for any type of communication that may be there. Somebody may be asking for a GPS and Easy Pass to be placed in the vehicle. This is kind of your last, if you haven't prepped prior to it, this is your last opportunity to make sure that actually happens before the person takes the keys. Also, you can communicate any damage that is found under the vehicle conditions. You click submit to finalize the dispatch out. And then the process in regards to returning the vehicle, very similar. You still have that current date and time, or the original reservation date and time. You have those same icons to help populate that. The big difference, though, in this situation for manual dispatching is that the end mileage has to be typed in if you do not have telematics that is going to feed that in for you. But if you're manually managing this through a manual dispatch, please make sure that you put that end mileage in. Otherwise, you're going to be losing critical information about your trips on that. The system here does actually automatically update and self-calculates the odometer end totals on that, so you see that information. Also, within the vehicle condition, this is a great opportunity when you're checking a vehicle back in to go ahead and note any changes to the vehicle's condition. There may have been that the windshield got cracked by a rock and you need to have repairs immediately. You can go ahead and put that in there, and what will end up happening is next time that information is going to feed into the next reservation. So you would see that upon the next dispatch, and so you can share that with your admins. The another portion here, and I don't think I actually did a slide for it, but this send admin email is a great opportunity for you to share this information with others of your admin staff, particularly if you're using a group email that everybody monitors. So you can end up clicking on the admin email. It's going to give you a pop-up menu, and it'll reference the reservation, and you can put in there that information about the windshield is cracked and we need to get it repaired. Well, I did actually put that in there, so there you go. Click on that, and it'll be a way to communicate again with everyone that's involved there at your facility. All right, so as we come towards the end here, other places vehicles can be dispatched include the managed reservations dispatch icon, the quick find assets, the quick find users, and then the dashboard departing returning section. So let's take a look at those real quick as we wrap up our discussion today. There from the managed reservations portion, there is a little D there. So rather than clicking on the view reservation, click on the D, and it'll take you right to that pop-up window for dispatch. Another place to find this is from the dashboard in the section that we call Quick Finds. You may or may not have used this function before, but a Quick Find allows you to search for your assets, your users, and your reservations. There's a drop-down menu there. There's a couple other items that you can search, including work orders if you use the maintenance module, key tags if you're using the key control system on that. But we're just going to look at assets, users, and also through in reservations on that. So Quick Find assets. You click on the asset portion. You can actually type in either the name of the vehicle or the license of the vehicle and hit go. And then what will appear is this special screen here, the asset lookup. And we're going to point this out, dispatch vehicles out to schedule reservations. You can see there's one reservation that is indicated by this number that is that this vehicle has been assigned to, and you can dispatch out. It'll give you that pop-up menu window for dispatching. But there may be situations where the number 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever appears there. That's an indication there's actually multiple reservations, and it doesn't go immediately to the dispatch screen. It goes to a list of reservations to be dispatched. Once you click on one of these, then you'll see the dispatch window will appear. You also can dispatch vehicles back in, and same scenario. It either goes directly to the dispatch window for one or reservation, or gives you the option of from multiple reservations. And then there's also, as mentioned earlier, Quick Pick. This is an area where you can actually make a reservation for on a vehicle. If you are ever wanting to make reservations, this would be a section for you to enter that reservation. There is also dispatch from the user portion. You would use Quick Find User, type in username or last name in this case. Both are acceptable, and hit go. And then it'll take you to the user lookup screen where it'll show what vehicles need to be dispatched out, or in some situations, actually show you which ones need to be dispatched into. Abe Lincoln has lots of reservations. And the system does, if you weren't aware of that, the system does allow for multiple reservations, even on the same day, for the same vehicle types. And that's by design, because for education, for higher ed, it may be that there are labs that need to go out and they need to take multiple SUVs. They need 5 of them, and you want them all in one professor's name. That is a possibility that you can do within FleetCommander. There's also from here the ability to make a new reservation on that. And then Quick Find reservations. You can actually go in, type a reservation. It'll take you into the reservation, which of course then that dispatch icon that we looked at earlier. And then finally, from the dashboard itself, you can always dispatch vehicles manually from here by double clicking on the name, and the dispatch window appears. And I just recently came across somebody on our staff who will remain unnamed that he used key control, and so he didn't really spend hardly any time within the dashboard, and he wasn't aware that you can actually dispatch from this portion by double clicking. So for any of you that weren't aware of that, now you know it. And that is all that I have for today. Any questions, Joe, that I'm missing here?
Well, John, we had a question. So Marcia asked the question about buffer. So can you spend 2 seconds and talk about buffer, its impact on the reservation, and the difference between making reservations with the buffer and then ignoring the buffer? I think that would probably clarify it.
Yes. When it comes to reservations, we have our managed fleet screen here. I'm flying without under the. I'm going to be able to do this. Let's see here. Let's go with electric. And save. Nope. Well, you may be familiar with this this field, this section here, but what it is that reservations, they end up being represented on the screen here, where right now you can see these blocks time for these days. They're green. If they were red, they would be, indication that a vehicle was in use. What'll happen is that with your end buffer, it will, when you drill down closer, like to your hour view, it's going to keep you from vehicles being assigned back to back by design, so that you can kind of avoid problems. Somebody running late, they say they're going to be back at 1 and they actually end up being back at 1:30. And if you have a 30-minute buffer or a 15-minute buffer, you're kind of protecting yourself against that. And that's really best practice, is to assign based upon the buffers and let the buffers, give you that wiggle room. But there are scenarios where that, say, you may have only 2 sedans, and the one that is just came back, you know, you're going to have to use it because the vehicle that was supposed to go out had a flat tire. So rather than changing start times or end times or anything like that, the ignore buffer will allow you to make that change without having to alter the true aspects of the reservation any further. Now, the one thing I would warn you in regards to buffers is that end buffers, when you ignore an end buffer on a reservation, it will impact that reservation going forward. So that if you end up needing to extend a reservation for a couple days and you had assigned it 5 minutes up against the previous reservation using that end buffer, you're going to get a message that says this, when you make that change to extend it by 2 days, you'll end up getting a message, this is going to impact another reservation. You're going to go, why? There's no reservations on this vehicle for the next 3 months. Well, it's not a reservation that was at the end that extending it is being impacted. It is, again, it is back towards the one that you bumped right up against with that 5-minute window initially. So if you start using ignore buffers, make sure you're consistent, or at least keep in mind when you see any weird messages that the buffer may be affecting the first part or the last part on that. Does that help in answer this question?
I believe it does, John.
Okay. Excellent. Let's see. Does that automatically generate a work order? Okay.
I think that's a different conversation. So I'll connect up with Marsha on that.
This is the most interaction I have ever seen in the chat. This is amazing. Thank y'all. Yes. Is there any particular to the discussion of managing reservations, making and managing reservations, Joe, that you noticed?
I don't think so, John.
Okay.
Like I say, Marsha mentioned kind of a maintenance item, and Melanie asked about a permissions issue. So I'll have to circle back, after the meeting with them.
Okay. Excellent. Well,
otherwise, I don't know that there are any other questions today.
Well, if you have them, email Joe, email me, email Kathy. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions. And if any of these merit it, we will consider them for Workshop Wednesday material. All right,
Excellent.
Joe.
So just to close everything out today, as we always kind of wrap up, again, FleetCommander is designed to help you manage your fleet and lower costs. Fundamentally, that's what it's all about, right? The more you use a vehicle, the more you utilize your vehicle, the lower costs you have. You're able to more effectively balance your fleet, get rid of vehicles you don't need, and lower your costs. So, it's always a good thing to get in the habit of, managing the fleet through FleetCommander and not on separate, spreadsheets and, slips of paper, cocktail napkins, etc. FleetCommander is designed to really do that for you. And it's got a lot of tools, certainly within the application that helps you get the most out of it, whether it's looking at specific utilization by types or by locations, as well as then, your annual mileages. So please take some time to do that. And again, as John has mentioned, we've done a lot of content recently that talks about the reports you should be using. If you're new to FleetCommander, we do provide links in the documentation so that you can take a look at those on your own time and certainly come back to us with questions. If you have any specific questions, we're here to help you out. So regardless of whether it's a FleetCommander question, we've got a great team at Agile that's well-versed in fleet management, and there's not much that we haven't seen over time. So we're happy to help you out where we can. As you think about your staff and whether it's staff changes or whether you're, just getting back into the office like some people are, if you need refresher trainer, please reach out to us, and we're happy to set something up to work with you on that. As you think about your fleet holistically, FleetCommander's got a wide variety of tools that we think that can help you as well. So whether or not you've got fuel cards or on-site fuel, we're able to bring, pretty much all of that data into FleetCommander to help you look at the vehicle holistically. If you do decide that you want to get into billing your organization for use, which is always a good idea, actually, we've got, 5 standard algorithms that, come out of the box. So always a good thing to think about, and I'm sure we can help you out there. And lastly, if you're not using kiosks and key boxes, it is something you ought to think about. Time and time again, when we look at sites and we look at, the amount of overhead that it takes to issue just a key, you're generally talking about 30 minutes. So when you start thinking about the amount of keys you're issuing, the lost keys, and what that overhead means to you, it's about putting the right resources in place to do the right work. And kiosks and key boxes are certainly a cheaper alternative than headcount or FTEs. Okay, John?
Hey, Joe, can I address the next 2 slides in regards to the upcoming sessions?
Sure. That would be great.
Sure. This one, August, may I have permission? The purpose and impact of user permissions. This is actually one of those audibles that I called based upon input that we received. In fact, I was talking to one of our clients who is in implementation right now, and through the onboarding, they asked, well, what are these permissions? What do they do? And I realized that actually is a question that we get have to answer a lot of times. So we're going to go ahead and do a deep dive into permissions and let you see what things you might not sometimes see on that. And these are
Great.
All these are hyperlinked in regards to past sessions. So that, and then last year's on that. Joe, why don't you tell them about user conference?
Yeah, so a lot of folks, user conference is rapidly approaching. It'll be held at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville at the end of September, so 26th through the 28th. The afternoon of the 26th will be dedicated to FleetCommander training. So if you are looking for some recurrent training, it's a great way to get it. And then you've got 2 days on site with the conference itself, and there'll be a lot of all things FleetCommander discussed during that time. There's probably close to 30 people, already registered. So, it'd be great to have you there. I think you get a lot of value out of it. And then John,
and I will be actually doing the user training.
And John will, in fact, be doing the user training. So that is great. That's right. I forgot to mention that. So go join John. And he'll have a better whiteboard today.
That's right.
And John, and what else you got on this one? And just lastly, for all of you folks that are, have been using FleetCommander for a while and used to Agile, there's a lot of online resources that you can access on your own. Certainly, if you need help from us, please reach out. But again, AgileFleet.com's got a lot of, online information regarding, webinars, user groups, sharing, case studies, and more. We're spooling up the blog. So, our marketing team is working on enhancing the blog and to understand, latest trends and news on the fleet management industry and how it may impact you. if you are on the higher ed side, Kathy Welleck, presents specific university focused higher ed webinars, once a quarter. So stay tuned for the next session there. And then, lastly, I think, thank you. So, typically there should be a slide in here that has our little QR code. So, please, oh, please, if you would give us your feedback about the session. As John mentioned, we put a lot of time and effort into, finding some good content and talking to you folks about what you need to operate more effectively. So we'd really like to have your feedback about how you enjoyed the session and what we can do to make it better. So thanks everybody for attending today.